Welcome to another edition of Hucks on Pucks. I'm your host, Kyle Huckins. And now we're finally getting to the Northeast Division. And we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up. And this is a tough division to figure out. I'm serious, I'm going to be second-guessing myself on the bottom four teams pretty much the whole time. But at the bottom, I'm going to have to go with the Montreal Canadiens again. Team was surprisingly bad last year. Now, a lot of it can be attributed to the fact the power play was absolutely dreadful. Problems with the coaching staff. It was all kinds of front office instability. Pierre Gauthier is gone. He got fired before he got lynched. And they brought in first-year GM Marc Bergevin. First-year GM in Montreal. No pressure, Mark. No pressure. I'm not saying he's not up to the job, but that's a very rough debut. Starting goal. Goal, they're fine. We got Carey Price signed. He's a young guy. He's probably going to play like 43 of the 48 games anyway. So I wouldn't worry so much about the backup spot for them, which is good because it's Peter Budaj, who isn't very good. He had every chance to seize the starting job in Colorado. He couldn't do it. He's not a good goalie. But Carey Price, he showed he broke through last year. He showed he can do this. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a top 3 NHL goaltender. But goaltending is not a concern for this team. The defense, on the other hand, first of all, as of this recording, PK Subban still isn't signed, and he's your best defenseman. And you can say what you will about the histrionics. I don't like the fact that he's very chippy, kind of dirty, but won't actually fight. But damn, he's a talented player. The guy can do it all. For whatever aggravation he may cause coaches in the front office, people are willing to take a chance on him because he's got skill. There's just simply no denying that. He's easily the best player on the Habs blue line. But he's not signed right now. Josh Gorges is signed, however. Very dependable defensive type. They also have Andrei Markov. For now. Now you can tell when he's coming because it sounds like someone shaking a bag of broken glass. That sound is coming from his knees. Because even in a shortened season, you can't expect he's going to play that much. He's had so many knee issues. I hope he does. He's a talented defenseman. He'll definitely help this team out. But he's probably not going to play that much. He hasn't been able to. You've also got Thomas Caberlet, who was on 4 teams in 1 calendar year last year. I traded from Toronto to Boston. Boston won the Cup with him and let him walk because he was actually not very good in the playoffs. Carolina signed him to a 3-year deal and traded him to Montreal 2 months later. Yeah, Thomas Caberlet is not good. He really hasn't had much of an offensive spark lately. In his own end, he's not fun. He's not a friend to the goalie. So they really need to get Subban into the fold quickly because they really don't have a whole lot there. Up front, they're not a great team up front, but honestly they're not terrible. Especially if Alex Galchenyuk can crack the team this year. He might be able to. Well, Montreal's decent at center. Thomas Plekanec's taken a step back, unfortunately. But Lars Eller looks like he's becoming a player. There may be room for him at center. Right wing, this team is very weak. I mean, Eric Cole had a great season for them last year. But he's an older guy. He's been hurt a lot throughout his career. Don't know how much he can be depended on. And Brian Giunta, he's a decent player. He's nothing great. No, he was never able to recapture those Devil seasons he had with Scott Gomez. Partially because even when they were together, Scott Gomez apparently left his game in New Jersey. Because he was with the Rangers and then got traded to the Canadiens for Ryan McDonough. I'm sorry, I'm really trying not to giggle over that one. But yeah, Scott Gomez is gone. Someone will pick him up on the cheap for a year. See if he's got anything left. Left wing is probably the strongest point in this team. Max Pacioretty had a breakthrough year. Even though he missed a little time, still recovering from Zdeno Chara almost killing him. Also won the Masterton Trophy for perseverance. And they got Rene Bourque and the McCamlary deal from Calgary. Rene Bourque's had some pretty good seasons. If he should bounce back, I mean, his best seasons and Camilleri's best seasons, they don't compare. I think Bourque's best is 27. Camilleri's broken 40 a few times. I believe he broke 40. If he didn't, he came damn close. But Bourque should definitely help out. Figure youngster Blake Geoffrion, who they got in the Hal Gill deal from Nashville, should be good. Also, grandson of Boom Boom. Proud lineage there. Of course, on left wing, you also have one of the most questionable signings of the offseason when they gave a 4-year, $10 million deal to Brandon Prust. I liked Brandon Prust when he was a Ranger. He's a tough guy. He will fight anything. He's a great penalty killer. One year, he even showed a bit of offense to his game. But he's not a guy you give 4 years to. Seriously, he's a fourth liner. He's a very replaceable guy. You can find a Brandon Prust pretty easily. I mean, like I said, I liked him. I wish him the best of luck in Montreal, but that contract's an amnesty buyout waiting to happen. It really is. But yeah, I think the fact this team just doesn't have a ton up front, missing their best defenseman as of now, I think this team's going to have a lot of trouble. So we'll go to number 4. And this is the reason I was having a lot of trouble, because number 4 is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs aren't very good either. Their main problem is the back end. Now, James Reimer's had flashes of looking like an NHL caliber goalie. He's also had flashes of being terrible. Jonas Gustafsson is gone. He's replaced by Ben Scrivens, who's barely got any NHL experience himself. So you have, Reimer's somewhat tested, but he missed a lot of the season with concussion symptoms last year. Goal is at best an unknown for them, unless they should swing a deal for Roberto Luongo. Honestly, given where Toronto is, I wouldn't really worry about that. They're not the Flyers. They're not a goalie away from winning it all. They're very far from winning it all. Because whoever their goalie is, he's going to have to play behind that defense. That defense is not good at all. Mike Komisarek has been terrible since coming over from Montreal. Jake Gardiner seems to have been a find, but he's also had concussion issues. As of now, he's not expected to start the season. Dion Phaneuf, which Dion Phaneuf are we talking about? Because he's been, after a stellar couple of seasons in Calgary, he's been inconsistent at best. And it's maddening because he clearly has everything a top-shelf defenseman has. He just never seems to have all those skills at the same time. J.M. Lyles, pretty decent offensive guy, not great in his own end. And guys like Carl Gunnarsson, Cody Franzen, they're not completely terrible, but all in all, it's not a great defense. But you can't even say it was really weakened by losing Luke Schenn in the JVR deal, because Luke Schenn has not looked that good in some time. But let's look at the forwards, because this is clearly where their strength lies. Top line of Lupul, Grabowski, and Phil Kessel. It's actually a pretty good line. Now, can Lupul keep last year going? Because last year was the year where he probably helped that he didn't get traded for Chris Pronger again. But he finally seemed to settle in somewhere, find an offensive role, and he started scoring. And, you can say what you will about Kessel. Yeah, they gave up too much to get him. But Kessel's performed. He hasn't disappeared. He's been averaging 30 goals. He's been a pretty good player in Toronto. It's unfortunately Tyler Seguin played a big role in the Bruins winning the Cup that year, and that's going to hang over him like the sword of Damocles for however long he's in Toronto. The top line's pretty solid. Clark MacArthur, I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, had a very good offensive season. Tyler Bozak's a decent center. And they got James Van Riemsdyk from the Flyers for Luke Schenn. JVR has had a difficult start to his career. Again, he's young, but he's been inconsistent. But there are games where he's also had injury issues. But there have been nights where he just looks like an unstoppable beast of a man. And considering Luke Schenn basically played his way out of Toronto, I can't really knock that deal at all. Now, the big guy they need this year is, will Nikolai Kulemin come back? couple years ago, he scored 30 goals. Last year, he had 7. Which is the real Kuhlman? If it's closer to the 30-goal guy, they're going to be a very happy team. But yes, the team has a decent set of forwards. They can score goals. It's just, will Randy Carlyle be able to whip these guys into shape enough that they don't give up so damn many? And my guess is probably not. They've had the same goaltending. Well, the goaltending is very inexperienced. They've had this defense for a while. I don't think it's necessarily a coaching problem. It's a personnel issue. I think they're going to be in trouble until they fix that. Leads me to my third place team, Buffalo Sabres. Well, this team's psyche was damaged last year, early in the season against the Boston Bruins, when Milan Lucic attempted to behead Brian Miller. Because they spent their entire offseason trying to get toughness to prevent that from ever happening again. Now in goal, Brian Miller, former Vezina winner, silver medal, his credentials are in order. They're good in goal. And Jonas Enroth has won a few big games for this team over the past couple seasons. They're okay in net. The defense is... It's weird. That defense feels like it should be a lot better than it is. Tyler Myers is very young. He's been inconsistent. His rookie season was great. His sophomore year, he was not. He's playing with Christian Ehrhoff, who I think Sabres fans are finding out is not a guy you give a 10-year deal to. He had some good years with the Sharks. He had that great year in Vancouver. And then the Sabres immediately handed him a 10-year deal. It's one of those... And I'll guarantee he gets the amnesty buyout at some point during the CBA. He's just not the guy you give that sort of a deal to. He's... I don't know if he's really a guy you want on your first pair. And, give a guy that contract, he's got to play there. And then Andrei Sekharov, he's a solid player. Robin Regehr is a very good defenseman when he's on the ice. He's tough, he's very physical, so he's had a lot of injury issues over the past few years. Also got Jordan Leopold back there to try to provide some offense. He is another guy who's been... He's skilled enough to stay in the league, but he's too inconsistent to really stay in one place for more than a few years. He's been passed around quite a bit. But it's one of those, that defense looks like it should be a lot better than it is. Up front, the moves they made were interesting. They got rid of longtime Sabre Derek Roy to bring in Steve Ott. Ott's not as talented as Roy was, which for a team that struggled to score makes little sense. I know Ott can score some goals, but mostly he's a guy you bring in to annoy people and start stuff. I think it was part of that Lucic thing, and I'm almost wondering if they think Ott is a fighter, because he has dropped the gloves before, but mostly he's a I'm going to start something and skate away kind of guy. Very annoying player. But in front of him, you've got Tyler Ennis and Cody Hodgson. It looks like they have a pretty good 1-2 punch at center. Hodson's young, but he's improving. I really thought Buffalo stole him from Vancouver for nothing. Right wing is where this team's got some punch. Jason Pominville was an all-star last year. Drew Stafford's been a pretty good scorer. Nathan Gerby, for being a little guy, he's got some quick hands and quick skates. He's shown... And, of course, you've got complete asshole Patrick Coletta. Definitely one of the more punchable players in the NHL. He's definitely loathed by many a hockey fan, myself very much included. Left wing is where the strength of this team is. Thomas Vanek. The man can flat out score goals. If Ville Leno should start living up to his contract, he might be the other amnesty buyout of the CBA. Because he put up great numbers on Philly's third line, and Buffalo threw a huge contract at him. Just one of those... Yeah, he was on a stacked offensive team, and he was on the third line. Ooh, yeah. That was one of those contracts like, oh, that's not a good idea. Maybe this year he can round back. If he can round back into form and start making that deal look decent, I'll give Buffalo more of a chance. But I really am not all that high on this team. Oh, and I'm forgetting their other big signing, John Scott from the Rangers. Yeah, he's basically out there to be the policeman. Even though Lindy Ruff's probably not going to dress him that much because John Scott skates in a fashion almost glacial. He's one of those guys, the first thing you always hear about him is he's 6'5", which to me is always a bad omen. It's like, oh, so his main skill is he's big. Can he do anything with that size? No, but he's big. Okay, so cement head. Yeah, a lot of people are on the Sabres bandwagon this year, and I know they've got Miller back there, but I'm not really not in love with the Sabres. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I could be wrong. Division basically shaken out the same as it was last year, as I'm sure you've noticed. Because now we're going number two, the Senators. Now, they've actually made a lot of changes, but nothing all that significant. Their biggest loss is probably Nick Foligno, who went to Columbus. Now, they lost Zen Konopka, who was actually a very good face-off man for them. He went to Minnesota. And Philip Kuba also left. But I don't think they lost... I think Foligno was their biggest loss. They've brought in a bunch of new players, but nothing all that great. Guillaume Latendresse is... He's one of those guys he's been around. And they're even signed best draft pick of the 2003 draft, Huge Specimen. I'm sorry, Hugh Jessamine. You Rangers fans in the audience will get that joke. And then probably throw something at the computer, because could have had Parisi. Could have had a lot of guys say they managed to find the only stiff in the bunch. Up front, I really expect them to be mostly the same team. decent 1-2 punch at center with Spezza and Kyle Turris, who really did come on after his trade from Phoenix. Spezza is Spezza. He will put up his points. He'll be flanked by Alfredson and Mahalik. You already know Ottawa's top line. This is really their problem, is pretty much all their offense is on that line. Because Kyle Turris is a decent center, but I mean, he may have Chris Neal on his right wing. Chris Neal's got some hands, but for the most part, he's just another one of those Steve Ott types who you just want to see ended. Because he's pretty good at the whole cheap shot thing. And he'll be really hard-pressed because there's really not much help if he gets in over his head. He doesn't have Matt Carkner getting his back anymore. Because there was a bidding war for his services for some reason. I'm guessing there are like 7 teams in this league that don't employ scouts. I could be wrong, but that's just my guess. But yeah, after that top line, it's a nosedive. So that's going to be a problem for them. Defensively, hard to believe we're saying this about a team that boasts the reigning Norris Trophy winner, but this defense is shaky. Now, Erik Karlsson he's great in the offensive end. He's not so much in his own. However, Chris Phillips is a pretty solid defensive anchor to pair with Karlsson. It's one of those, yeah, Eric, you go play with Jason, Daniel, and Milan, and if you guys lose the puck, I'll deal with it. After that, really not much to speak of. I mean, Sergei Gonchar is your third defenseman, and he just about looks to be done. Like, to the point where even at the deadline, I can't imagine anyone's going to be really interested in trying to pick him up. I know it's the last year of his contract, but he just doesn't have it anymore. In goal, they're still waiting on Robin Leonard to come through. It seems like they've been saying that for a few years now. So in the meantime, they're going to have Ben Bishop and Craig Anderson. Craig Anderson he's shown flashes of being very good. He can be very bad. Either way, though, no matter how you slice it, just don't let him make a sandwich. If you didn't get that joke, you should have started following hockey last year. But yeah, no, if they can keep Craig Anderson out of the kitchen and playing like he did last year, this team will probably scratch into one of the lower playoff spots. You know, at forward, they're not deep enough to really compete for a cup. But with that top line, you don't want to run into them in the playoffs either, because those 3 guys get hot for a couple of weeks, and it's curtains. As the Rangers almost found out last year. So, not a great team, but they've got enough going for them. I like them more than anyone else in the division, with the exception of the Boston Bruins. Now, really, what's not to like about Boston? They won the Cup 2 years ago. Well, their strength the past few years has been their goaltending. That's now a question mark. Because Tim Thomas is not going to play this. He hasn't announced his retirement. He's just not playing this season. So Tuukka Rask takes over in net. And Rask has actually won the starting job from Thomas before. Did it, I think, 3 seasons ago. And then, Thomas got the job back. I know Rask's never really carried the water over a long period of time, but I think Boston's going to be fine because they've always managed to get Thomas plenty of rest because they knew they had faith in Rask. So I don't think goaltending is really... It's a bit of a question mark, but not really. Even so, he's got a really good defense in front of him. Obviously, the big man there, no pun intended, Zdeno Chara. All 8'19" of him. Very, very large Slovakian. He's going to be the main man, of course. Why wouldn't he be? He's gigantic, and he can fire the puck through a building. He's going to be relied on quite heavily. The rest of the defense is pretty solid. Dennis Seidenberg has shown he's a good quality player. Andrew Ference has been solid on them for a few years. And they might have new kid Dougie Hamilton in, who was taken with one of the picks they got in the Phil Kessel deal that just keeps paying off. And the offense may get even better this year. Because you got the top line of Bergeron, Sagan, and Marchand. Marchand's a very aggravating player, but he's got skill. Bergeron's one of the best two-way centers in the league. Tyler Sagan, this is only his third season. There's really no reason to think he won't be good for this. That he won't be even better. They also get kind of an addition because Nathan Horton missed a lot of last season. He's supposed to be back. And team him with David Krejci and Milan Lucic. That's a very good second line. Bottom two lines, actually their third line's pretty decent with Chris Kelly and Rich Peverley. Chris Kelly's definitely developed some hands since he came over from Ottawa. And Peverley's been very solid since he came from Atlanta. Your fourth line, Campbell, Payet, Thornton. Thornton's there to punch. Campbell's a serviceable player. Nothing great. But all in all, they're pretty solid up front. I do like that defense and their goaltending. I'll grant you maybe Rask is a bit of a question mark, but I really don't see any reason the Bruins aren't going to win this division and contend for the Stanley Cup. I'd say they're definitely one of the... I won't say anything. No, they're definitely one of the... They're definitely in the class of the East, and they're easily the class of this division. So, anyway... Gonna take another seat in the box for 2 minutes and be back out for my next shift.